My name is Brittany Gilmore, and I'm part of the programs team with Lean in Calgary. Thanks for taking the time to join us today, what I'm sure will be a great session. Today's session, Financial Confidence, is the final part of our confidence series. If you missed either the first or second session, you can always view those recordings on our YouTube channel, as well as through the Eventbrite links. So I'd like to acknowledge the land that we're on. For our guests joining us from Calgary, we gather in the traditional territories of our Treaty 7 nations in Southern Alberta and the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Our city is located where the Bow River meets the Elbow River. This site has long been called Womencents, and it is the birthplace of the city of Calgary. Before we begin the session, I would like to introduce Susan Alford, Lean in Calgary's president, to share a few words.
Thank you, Brittany, and welcome everybody. I'm thrilled to be here this evening to welcome you all to the third and final part in our three-part series on the topic of confidence. And each of these topics have been completely independent, so you don't have to have attended the first two to get anything out of this evening's. All of the topics have been completely independent. It's just that we use the theme of confidence for this past season of our events here in Calgary. So confidence is such a hot topic for women always, yet we've been blown away by the response we've been getting to these events. It means we really hit on something that matters and something that matters to women all over the world. Our first two sessions approached confidence around presenting yourself in career and showing up at work. And today I'm really excited that we're speaking on something that's very tangible, and it's around being confident in your financial decisions. So one of the things that I love about what Vanessa is going to bring to the table to us tonight is that she makes what can be a really complex topic actually really easy to understand. And she makes it fun too. So I love this about Vanessa's approach. But before we welcome Vanessa, I'd like to share a little bit about Lean In. So for some of you, this may be your first time attending a Lean In event in Calgary. And Lean In is part of a global not-for-profit organization, largely funded by a private foundation started by Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl is well known in her role as Chief Operating Officer of Facebook, but she climbed into more of the mentorship and a voice for women when she wrote a book called Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead. So she wrote this book when after spending her career, she studied at a number of different universities, and she had various positions as she was working in her career. So one day she just started noticing that there was less and less women around the table as she was climbing through corporate America. And there was less women around her. And she got curious about that. What had she done differently? And where were all the women? Which is why she wrote Lean In. She just got really curious about what was setting her apart and what other women may or may not be choosing to be able to also share boardroom tables with her. She had no idea she was going to spark a movement of women wanting to hear more. In fact, there was such an uprising after she wrote this book that her team came to her and like, Sheryl, you're going to have to do something. We've got all these women wanting more from you. And she's like, I already have a job. I already have a job. But yet she found space in her calendar and mobilized a team and funded this foundation that she now runs, or she funds. She has other people to run it, and which has sparked this global movement around the world. So now Lean In is in 184 countries with more than 35 circles around the world. And Lean in Calgary is one of Canada's 3 citywide networks. We launched here in Calgary in September 2019, and we've grown since then to well over 700 members. You can be a member too. It's free. You just sign up for our newsletter at www.leanincanada.com. Membership is free, and you'll be the first to know about future events and additional resources to help you build your career and your ambitions. The benefit to Lean In and to us, if you sign up, is we'll be able to access more funding to continue to be able to offer events for free, even when we go back to in-person events. So please do sign up, or I shouldn't say, I don't know that we'll be able to offer them free when we're in person. We do have cost recovery, but we'll be able to offer more resources the more people who are signed up on our membership list. We also have a couple of exciting volunteer opportunities coming up with our local network. My position's up, Lean in Calgary Network President. I will still be on the team, but I feel it's time to pass the torch to another capable individual. So that position is up for application, as well as our lead of social media at the moment. and it's possible that we'll have another role coming soon. So if you're interested in getting more involved with Lean In at the citywide level, there's lots of exciting opportunities, and we have a whole lot of fun in the meantime. Further to that, should you be interested in joining or starting a circle, which is a smaller group that gather often monthly around a theme or common purpose, please do reach out. We'll be happy to connect you with some circle leaders to help you get started. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite Brittany back to introduce tonight's speaker.
Thanks, Susan. I know many of us have been on virtual calls for over a year now, but just a few friendly reminders and housekeeping rules. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking. There will be an opportunity to speak and ask questions during the Q&A, so you'll be able to raise your hand and ask questions. We encourage you to turn your video on only if you feel comfortable to. And if you want to change the view to see either the speaker better, or if you want to see who else is attending, just click on the upper right corner of your screen and click the change to speaker view instead of gallery view, and vice versa. And if you haven't already, feel free to use the chat feature to say hi and tell us where you're from. And throughout the presentation, you can always pop your questions in there as well. So now let's get on to our main event and why we're here tonight. When it comes to our finances, most women want to build knowledge, gain confidence in making decisions, and know we have financial security for the future. Within the next few years, it is estimated half of the wealth in Canada will be controlled by women, making it more important than ever to have effective strategies and resources tailored to what we need to manage this wealth with confidence. In this evening's session, we feature Vanessa Stockbrugger, founder of Womencents, who is a sought-after speaker, financial educator, and coach, helping women and couples across Canada take charge of their money, reduce stress, and create the life they want to live. Welcome, Vanessa.
Hello everyone. It is so great to be here. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Susan, for that introduction. And that compliment, Susan, that I actually make this topic fun. I think that's a compliment, right? When I hear that I can take this topic and actually make it engaging, that is one of the biggest compliments I get. So thank you for that. I'm a big fan of Lean In, so I'm very honored to be part of this series. I love the word confidence, and I've actually listened into the prior two sessions and got a lot out of that. And I think there's some overlap there for sure. And I've tied some of those themes into this presentation as well. So thank you for joining tonight. I look forward to sharing my thoughts with you and then hearing all of your questions and comments and having a discussion afterwards. All right. So I want to set you up to know what to expect. What are we going to be talking about tonight? And I'm not going to be getting into detailed, necessarily financial specifics. As good as I am at making them simple, as Susan said, that's key. We want to understand things from a financial point of view that are relevant to us in a way that are engaging. But tonight I really want to talk about more general themes, and maybe in our discussion and questions, we will get into some specific details. But the themes tonight are going to be around financial confidence, what it looks like. Why is this important anyway? Why do we care? And then specifically, how are we going to build it? And I want to give you some tools to do that. There's going to be a big focus on what we can control, right? We want to know, where can we take charge in our money life? I have something about cleaning our financial closet that I developed that I'm going to share with you tonight. And I'm going to talk about our personal money equation. I have two daughters, and I've been maybe spending way too much time in online schooling, but with grades 6 and 7, we've been talking fractions and algebra. So I brought a little bit of that into this personal money equation tonight to kind of give a visual and also some parameters around the different areas that we can focus on in our life and in our financial life specifically to make a difference in the future. I want to start with this idea, this quote, because I think it's very important that we acknowledge anytime we talk about finance that we are all at different stages. And when we start talking about money, we all come with a lot of baggage, a lot of history, potentially, maybe some shame and some guilt around it. Maybe we're in a very positive place. And I think it's just really important that we acknowledge we're all on our own journey and that we can do things today. Each one of us has some work to do in our financial life that will move us forward. And I see this every day in working with clients. And it's one thing about starting my own company is that I'm able to work with clients of all different wealth levels. And some of them are starting out, some of them are getting close to retirement. But know that wherever you are in your financial journey, that we're going to leave the past behind. But the steps you take from this evening on are what's going to change the future. And I truly believe, and it's what I've seen happen, that everyone has that ability to make positive change in their financial life. So what is financial confidence? And this is interesting. This is the back of my business card. I haven't given out one of these in 18 months, probably, right? Probably the Lean In event that I attended in person was at September 2019. I probably handed out a few of these cards, but I added this. I've never used this in the presentation. I thought, how powerful that I am invited to speak on financial confidence when this has been my theme since day one of starting my company. And I say empowering women through financial confidence. But what is confidence? What's financial confidence? And I thought about what the definition is. And it's a feeling, first of all. It's not something that we can necessarily identify. It's how we feel about our finances, and that we have self-assurance that we have the ability, our own ability, to make decisions, to determine our financial future. So you see, this is not something we can get externally. We can get support, we can get help, we can get the tools, but it really is an individual thing that we need to build. And that's going to be a theme throughout this as well, that this is not something we can rely on someone else to do for us. And this leads into why it is so important. And really, these three reasons are my big why of why I started my company, why I do what I do. And it's because of what I hear and what I see of what people are going through. And particularly, I focus on Canada and the stress around money. So health and well-being is reason number one, that why we have to build our financial strength, our financial confidence, because stress is high and money is the number one stress. Money is the number one issue ruining our relationships. We tend to avoid money discussions. And if we truly want to be healthy and have a good mental health, emotional health, I believe it also stems into our financial health. And we need to build that as well. In order to reach our life goals is reason number two. How can we know that we're on a path that we are going to be able to live the life we want if we don't have our financial life in order? And this is just so important. I focus a lot on client goals. What do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to work? What's your career look like? Do you want to take time away? Do you want to take care of an elderly parent? Do you want children? Where do you want to live? All of those things have a financial impact. And so it's so important that we understand our finances in order to actually reach those goals. And that is one thing that I want to help people do every day, because then when they're reaching their goals, they're stepping out and helping other people help themselves reach their goals. And it's a ripple effect. And the third reason that we need to have financial confidence is so that we are prepared for anything. And I have a very personal story when it comes to being prepared. And I said, this is my why of what I do is these three reasons. And it's really, I want women prepared for whatever might come their way. And this can be an opportunity or it could be a negative event in their life. And my personal story started when I was very young, knowing that we needed to be prepared because things did happen. And unfortunately, when I was 7 years old, my parents were in a car accident and we lost my father. And suddenly My 35-year-old mom is a widow with 4 little children living on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan. And she was immediately pushed into that position of making all financial decisions for us, for the farm, for our futures. And she didn't have a choice in that matter. So I'm just so passionate about helping women understand their finances, know that they can do this, they are capable, but preparing for that instead of waiting until maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's an illness, a tragedy of some kind where then they have to take control of their finances. It's better to build it beforehand. And so being that proactive is much more beneficial. This can also be preparing for very positive things such as building a business, right? Wanting to step away from your career, maybe building a business. If saying yes to an opportunity to move to another country for a position. So this can take on very many different forms, but really it's so important so that once we have our financial life in order, we're just much more resilient. We're much more able to step out into the world and show our true self and value. And I want to give you a little bit of a background of who I am and where I come from. I mentioned the farm in Saskatchewan, and it's 1984. My mom is faced with this, and you can imagine the people who had their opinions of what she should be doing. Staying on a farm with 4 little children, from the ages of 6 to 12. What are you doing? Are you sure that's a good idea? And they just said, I think that's too hard. And she said, watch me, and I'm going to make this work. And because she was so committed to the goal of having us be raised the way her and my dad had planned. And so she kept us on that 300-acre farm in all the winters, in all of the goods and the bad. And she rented out the land. She had to figure out how to do that. I'm sure she worried many a nights whether the rental income would come in and different things like that. But we talked about money. I was aware of what was happening. Well, that farm today is now 4,000 acres. And 2 of my brothers, they farm it full time. All 4 of us are very involved in the farm. I have an older sister. My daughters, it's the best place for them to vacation. They'd rather pick there than Disneyland. So it's become so much a part of our life. And it actually was recognized as a Blue Ribbon Hellman's Farm, which is 1 out of 5 only in North America. So you see the story of that decision my mom made and that ripple effect that it's now created for my brothers, who obviously have had to put in a lot of work and their own commitment. So I came from a farm in Saskatchewan, spent a few years in the big city of Regina getting my business degree, and then I went to Bay Street in Toronto. So is there a culture shock between Regina farm, living for 18 years and Bay Street? Absolutely. And I took that position after I didn't know a single person in Toronto. I didn't even really know what investment banking was. That was the position I had accepted, but I knew that I had to do this. And I didn't spend the whole time in Toronto. I spent most of my time in Calgary, actually, as an investment banker, but I spent a decade of my career, so over 10 years, and I worked my way up. And there's going to be a theme as well. I started as an analyst at the beginning position and worked my way up to be a vice president when I was 26 and a director when I was 30. And it was a great responsibility, a fantastic, rewarding career. When Susan talked about the Lean In book, I've read it and I could identify because it's a very male-dominated environment. And my clients were very male-dominated as well. And you learn to work within that structure. And I enjoyed this career. However, after 10 years, I made the decision to step back. And that was based on these 2 little girls coming along, not at the same time, but pretty close. And I didn't see this vision of how I could be the investment banker that I was and the mom that I wanted to be. So, there's a lot of different themes here that fit so well with Lean In. So I did stay home with those 2 girls. And yes, this picture is outdated, but it's the last picture I have of both of them in pink dresses and hugging. So I'm going to continue to use that for a while. They're now teens and a tween. So they have grown up, but they were a big reason of the shift that then I moved to really pursue my passion, which is Womencents. And what Womencents is a financial education and coaching company where I do not sell any investment products, but instead I really want to focus on building the confidence, the knowledge of women. And so that's what Womencents has allowed me to do. Now, what stands in our way of building financial confidence? Well, women in particular say that they lack it, and they also want to build their financial knowledge. And there's a bigger gap in confidence between men and women than there is between men and women when it comes to knowledge. But especially our confidence is lower when it comes to the big decisions like investing, the longer term decisions. We tend to be very involved in the day-to-day and paying bills and budgeting. But when it comes to investing, we do lack that financial confidence. And was stated in the introduction, we are going to be controlling wealth and significant as we continue to participate more in the labor force, hopefully narrow the pay gap, and really inherit money and have different ways that we're going to build this wealth. But women are going to be controlling at least half of the wealth. And this is very important that we do not give this job to someone else. It's a role we want to take on. All these things on this wall I've heard before, and I get it. We're busy and we don't need another thing to do. And so really now I have to be involved in the finances in the long term. Maybe someone else can handle this, but it really is so important. And it's not as though we take a big wrecking ball and we're gonna knock this wall down. Instead, it really is about chipping away at it. And how are we going to do that? And this is one of my solutions. And I call it the financial strength pyramid. And I use this analogy because we need to start at the base and we need to work our way up. And there's 4 key principles that are involved. When I started my company, I really gave a lot of thought to what is my purpose? What do I want to get women doing? How is this going to work? What do they really need? And this was one of the first things that I created. And when we start at the bottom, the first E of this pyramid is engagement. We need to be engaged when it comes to our finances. We need to make this a priority, or no one else will. This is our life. So be involved in the meetings. Sitting in webinars like this is absolutely engagement. Googling a topic you want to learn more about, listening to a podcast, right? If you have a financial advisor and they are inviting you as a couple to a meeting, you go too. Those are the ways that we can be engaged. Opening our statements by email, or, likely they're not paper anymore, but if they are, whatever it is, actually reviewing this information. The second E is education. We need the knowledge. And should it be taught in schools to a greater extent? Absolutely. But it's a lifelong journey. And I don't think we can be taught it all in grade 11 and 12 to set us up for the rest of our life, because our needs change. So this education is ongoing. So we need to seek that out. And this is one of the big reasons that I do Money Club and I try to do webinars and things like that. And there's various resources out there, and we're going to be sharing a lot of those, of how do you build your knowledge. It's so important. We don't need to become experts. We do have to build have an educational component to money. And maybe it wasn't taught in your household. So you are in a position where you have to seek it out further. And you're going to change that then if you have children, right? And make sure we teach that in the household. The 30, and this is extremely important, is execution. We need to take action. ACT, A-C-T, action changes things. It's great to be engaged. It's great to get this knowledge and do these kind of events, but what are we going to do with it? What are you going to leave after this call and do? And that's what's going to move us forward. So I'm very, very focused on action steps. What is the plan? But making it manageable. They don't have to be these big, significant steps. I love James Clear, Atomic Habits, his book. I mean, it's about the small things that we do day to day that then develop over time to be something of great value for us. And so what are the action steps that you can take to truly move you forward on in your financial life? And the top of this pyramid, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is an analogy of this, is that it's that pinnacle piece. It's what I call experience. And this is the idea that we all have different histories. We have a different path and experience that we've grown up with. And there's going to be pieces in our financial life that feel good for us that maybe don't work for someone else. And maybe that's one of the issues in our financial services industry, is that we think it's a one size fits all too often. And that's just not the case. So I want you to make sure that any solutions you put in place, those are right for you, that those have helped you to truly move forward, and those are going to be what you need in your life. So pay attention to that. You know more than you think when it comes to that, is what I find when I'm working with women. It's all about being in control of this future financial security. And so we don't want to let it just happen. We want to create it. So how are we going to do that? And I want to give you 2 strategies of ways to build your financial confidence. Ways that you can do after this session, that you can do for your own household, that will build your engagement, your education, and hopefully also create some action steps for you. And the first one is having a clear understanding of your current financial position. I think too often we add something new to a situation that we don't fully understand. And so I always have people take a step back and say, the first thing we're going to do is understand what your current financial position looks like in your household, if you are financially dependent with a partner. And I call this cleaning your financial closet. So here's a disorganized financial closet. Can cause stress all on its own. Just having your finances not in order, right? We don't know what's in there, if something should be in there, but it's not, or we think something's in there and it's actually not. Maybe it's outdated. Maybe it's the wrong size, doesn't fit with us anymore. It's the wrong season. And it's interesting, I had a client send me an article just recently about a couple who had lost an RSP account. And, a big part of that can be just this disorganized financial closet, not keeping track of our information. And so we want to turn this disorganized financial closet that can cause us stress on its own into a cleaned financial closet. And there's 5 key pieces. And we all have a financial closet. Now, everything is going to be there. These 5 pieces I'm going to talk about are going to be there in some form, but they're going to look different for each one of us. And it's important that we understand what it is that we have and what we need in our own financial closet. Number 1, financial assets. This is represented by a dress in the closet. I use this as a security. It's the item that you're going to put on, that you're going to feel good about yourself when you put this on, whatever it might be in your closet. But these are our bank accounts, are in Canada, tax-free savings accounts, RSPs, pensions. We want to have a full inventory of everything we have in the household. We want to know what these accounts are. How do they work? What's invested in them? What are the fees that we're paying on these different accounts? Where are they located, right? And so knowing what we have, remember, we're not going out shopping for any more dresses. We're going to figure out what we have first. And a lot of what I see is maybe people not using their tax-free savings account, underutilized or not fully understood. And it's a great resource in Canada as a tax preferential savings option. Number 2 in our financial closet, debt, represented by the high heels. High heels, very interesting. I chose this because the higher they get, the more uncomfortable they can become. But man, they make us look real good from the outside. And I think this is important because we often will compare our financial closet to someone else's. Often we don't even understand what we have, but we think we know what someone else has. We do not know what high heels they're walking around in and maybe how uncomfortable that may or may not be. We all have different comfort levels in high heels, don't we? And God help us when we actually have to be wearing them again. I think that we're going to find that they're extremely uncomfortable. We're going to have to learn again how to walk in them. So these high heels represent debt. Once again, we need to clean out the closet. What do we have in this area of our closet? Do we have a line of credit that's joint with a partner? Do we understand what that is? When are the renewals coming on our mortgage? I've been all over clients in the last 6 months saying, if your renewal is coming up, start talking to your lender. And just by clients asking even their existing mortgage provider about their mortgage in advance, they've gotten lower rates. So being on top of these things, understanding what the payment terms are, what the interest rates are. Third piece of our financial closet, represented by the suit jacket, our workplace benefits. Now, we may or may not have these in our closet, but if we do, this is another area where I see that we don't always understand them. So remember, we're just understanding what's there. So we get the booklet the first day we start work. This is the last thing. It's the most maybe boring part of the job, right? We're excited to get started. We sign up for the pension. I hope we're participating in the matching program. But we didn't know that we just got this default portfolio for our pension. It's super low risk, and we're 30 years old, and we have 35 years before we're going to use this pension. But we didn't pay attention to that. So now we're going to pull all that out. We're going to understand what's there. We're going to realize we maybe have some choices around that as well. Fourth piece, the umbrella. We hope we don't need it. We don't want to have to use it, but we carry it around, right? Insurance is an important piece. And what I find here is that either people have put it into place and then they've forgotten what they did, which is great that they have it, but they don't know the details. And we wouldn't want a situation where suddenly you need to be using it or needing this information and you don't have it. Okay, so it's very important that, and this is what I do with clients, is we clean their financial closet and we make a summary. We make sure that we know, oh, you have term life insurance. Oh, it's coming up for renewal in 4 years. Did you know if you don't contact the insurance agent that it will automatically renew and at a much higher price? Maybe you didn't know it was coming to term in 4 years, so you might want to actually put in new insurance. Those kind of pieces are very, very important, and you don't want that to be coming up when there's been an unexpected event, right? Number 5, the fedora hat. Serious stuff, right? Estate plan, another thing. We don't want to talk about these things. If we don't want to talk about money, interesting statistic somebody sent 61% of women would rather talk about their death than their money. I don't know how you do a survey question with that, but even if it's over 0%, I think that's really quite concerning. But if we don't want to talk about money, we actually don't want to talk about death either. They're both just topics that make us cringe, but it's important. And number 5 is this estate plan. And if you do not have an up-to-date will, don't worry, you're in good company. Over 50% of Canadians don't have a will, but we're on a mission to change that because it leaves the people behind, obviously, in a very difficult position. So we want an up-to-date will. Often what I've seen, I'm just trying to give some tidbits of kind of what I see often, is that maybe someone has a will or a couple has a will, but it's now out of date because the executors, they've chosen their parents who are now aging, and they're probably not the right people any longer to be the executors. Maybe they've had children and they haven't updated the will, so now there's no guardians listed. There's also pieces to the will or to the estate plan that take care of us if we're alive, but we need someone else to step in and take control. So it's very important that we have this in place and then we communicate it. We communicate it to the people who are going to be impacted. You don't just put somebody as an executor without having that communication with them. Hey, this is what I've given you as a role. Are you okay with that? Especially probably your guardians as well. They want to know if they're getting your children. So these are the 5 key pieces. There's going to be a financial closet checklist that I believe we're going to be sharing with you. So you can go through and clean your financial closet, all these 5 pieces, and make sure you know, first of all, what you have in place, because that is key. We're not going to run out and get anything new if you find you're missing something. Because what happens is that there's a purpose why go in this order. And in order to do a good review of your insurance or to understand how your estate plan might be best set up, you need to understand what you have for financial assets, what do you have for debt, what do you have for insurance. So they're all very interrelated. So first piece was clear understanding of current financial position. Now, the second strategy to build your financial confidence is what I call your personal money equation, and analyzing this and optimizing. So if you think about the financial closet as a point in time of where we are at today, your personal money equation is this idea of the path we're putting ourselves on to move to a future point. And perhaps I've spent, like I said, too much time online schooling with my girls in algebra and various things, but I want to share this personal money equation with you and then break down the individual pieces and say, where do we have power and control? And where can we make choices and decisions that are right for us? So this personal money equation, first of all, it impacts our financial closet, and it's our future self that sometimes is difficult to identify with. And this is why being very clear on our goals and priorities is so important. Know that we have control, we have choice, that these variables are not fixed. I think sometimes we believe we can't make changes. Well, if anything has been taught to us in the past 18 months, it's that change can happen. I've seen a significant change in people's financial spending, in their decision-making, that was somewhat forced on them, but it shows that we can make changes here, and that it is unique to us as well, this personal money equation. Big words I use that are important are having intention, and this doesn't just happen. Wealth building, having financial security does not happen. It's intentional, and we need a strategy to get there. And it is those small, manageable, intentional steps that are going to get us there, but we need to have those in place. And it's based on this premise that there's three options with our money. That's all we have. Dollar comes into our household. We have a decision. Do we spend it? Do we save it? Or do we repay debt if we have debt to repay? And that, is so simplistic, right? And yet within each of those decisions, there are so many different options and choices we can make. So let's get into the pieces. Personal money equation, the formula. Our financial security is a function of, number one, the wealth we build. Now, when we advertise this event, it said it is not just about the amount of money we have. And that's absolutely true. Now, wealth is important and we want to build wealth. I'm not crazy. And that's one thing that I've set out to do, is help build the wealth of Canadians, and particularly women. However, we cannot on its own just build wealth and expect we're going to have financial security. We need instead to focus on our power and control over it. If we do not feel power and control, it does not matter how much money we have. I can give you an extra $10,000, but if you do not have a plan with it, if you don't know what you're doing with the existing money you have and feel good about your plan, then this will not help you. And this is what I've seen, is that because of the variation of clients that I work with, and as I talked about at the very beginning, all of us on this call have a different wealth level. And we also have a different feeling of power and control. And I would say that just because you have a higher wealth potentially does not mean you feel you have higher power and control, and therefore you do not have a higher financial security than someone that potentially has less wealth. So we want to build our wealth. We also want to build the power and control we feel. And over all of this, the denominator, I'm sorry to bring the fractions into it, but in the bottom of this formula, we have to focus on our goals and priorities. And every financial decision we make has to be aligned with what's important to us. So that is the base. So let's break this down now into the different pieces. The income, less the spending. What is that? Well, that's what we save or what we can repay debt with. So let's move into those pieces. Now, where can we take control of our income? Because this is an important piece, right? Money inflows and the pay gap. We talk a lot about that, and women earning money so that then they can build their wealth. And I use the acronym PAY. This ties very nicely into the other two series, parts of this series on confidence and knowing your worth and being a leader, especially in your organization. And I use the acronym PAY, which stands for Plan, Ask, and You. Plan means, what is your plan for your career, for your income level? And let others know that. Ask for what you want, advocate for yourself. And we heard that in session 2. And I have to tell you that those promotions that I earned as an investment banker were never a surprise. I let them know, I want to be a VP. This is the track I see myself on. I was asking for it. I didn't assume. And I think sometimes we as women feel others know this, or that we don't want to ask in case we're not ready. Bit of the imposter syndrome. But we can do this. And if we see that in our vision, then we need to let others know. The why is you, meaning invest in yourself, personally, professionally. And I think more than ever, it's going to be important that we build our skills. It's going to be an ongoing learning process, because you think about how quickly the world changes. And I've seen some clients do amazing things and pivot right over the last 10 months, specifically, just as we said, things have changed. What am I going to do? And a lot of them are doing different educational courses and that kind of thing to really hone their skills and do what others are not prepared to do in a time where things have been so uncertain. I think there was a Brené Brown podcast that I got that from. But we really have to be ready to step up and build our income, because this is an important piece to building wealth. But the second piece is that if we build our income and then we spend more than that, we are no better off. So I think sometimes I use the term rich in that's an income, that's a temporary thing. Wealth is a long-term build, and it's all about the income that we retain. And if it goes out the door, now we cannot build on that and build our wealth and our future savings, our future spending. But a big piece of understanding your personal money equation, remember, we take income less spending. So doing a household spending analysis. I'm not big on putting everyone on a budget and slashing budgets. Instead, I want to raise awareness. And this doesn't matter how much money we make or how much we spend, we all should be doing this. And I use 3 different categories based on our ability to control. Once again, this was from years ago studying elementary science with my daughters. I felt there were 3 ways we had to define spending. It wasn't needs and wants. It wasn't fixed variable. There were 3 in my mind. And this is what I came up with to say, we can define our spending by our ability to control. We can call them solid expenses, which are not changing. Very difficult. You can't get off this call and say, that's it. Mortgage is done. I'm not paying that anymore. I'm going to cancel all my loans and insurance premiums, right? Those are more fixed. We need to know what they are. Liquid expenses are just that. More variable. We have some control over these. Now they're going to be there in some form. This is the groceries, transportation, but there is a wide variety of spending in this category, right? Where do you shop for your groceries? Do you do that and take out? What kind of car do we drive? All those different things. The other part about this is this glass can only get so full, and then it starts to overflow. So I think we have to be careful in this category as much as they tend to exist. Children's activities, pet costs, these are the types of things that I would say are liquid expenses. And then the gas expenses are those that we really could release if we needed to. And believe me, I had clients releasing these expenses last April when their chiropractors and health practitioners of different kinds and their offices are being closed and they're not sure what's next. They knew immediately what category how much, where they could reduce their spending. Now, these are the fun things in life. So a few messages here are, make sure these are things that are aligned with your values and goals. Make sure that you know what you're spending in this category, because they can add up very quickly, the entertainments, vacations, hobbies, things like that. But also know that these are a choice. And if there was one area, if there was an upset in your life, that this is where you can quickly go to make a change. It's also an area that I would say we should be saving in advance for, because this is where shame and some guilt can feel around our spending. So if we save in advance and we're very intentional, we can remove that. having a plan. A big question I get, should I repay debt or should I save? So remember that part of the formula is income less spending. Well, what's left over? Should I use that to repay debt or should I save that? Well, this would be my response to that question. Overall financial situation, you've cleaned your financial closet. How does it look? Right now, you know what you have for financial assets. Do you have more high heels than you have dresses? So let's be number one. If you have high interest rate debt, if you're paying 20% on a credit card or 8% on an unsecured line of credit, those are the kind of costs you're talking about. I think it's very important that you aggressively repay that debt, especially if you have an amount in savings earning 0.01%, right? We want to make that comparison. We do want to have a cash cushion then, I would say. We want to build up an emergency fund for sure, 3 to 6 months if you want a convention of what your spending is. And now you know what it is. You look at your solid and liquid expenses and say, I better have 3 to 6 months of that set aside or have access to it from somewhere because I know that those costs are not going to be able to be changed very easily. Another question or a consideration is whether your debt is good debt versus bad debt. Good debt is that's going to make you money in the future. It's on a long-term asset like your home. Your mortgage is good debt, maybe a student loan, because now your income can be increased because of that. Bad debt tends to be things that we consume. So we've taken the holiday, it's 3 months later, we're still paying for that, or we're still paying for the furniture that we thought we'd by now we were very optimistic. We were sure we'd have the money, but it's not going to now make us additional wealth. Right. And so that's considered bad debt. I would suggest we get rid of the bad debt because it tends to stick around. Is it tax deductible is one consideration. And I want to talk about personal mindset. And I have had clients who have repaid debt and they didn't care. They didn't do this comparison of what can I make in the market versus, oh, my mortgage rate is this. They said, when I'm 40, I'm not going to make a mortgage payment anymore. And I've had clients do that and they've paid off their mortgage and it's now they don't have that monthly cost. And that's a mindset. I've had clients take savings and say, I don't want a car loan payment anymore. It's bothering me and I'm paying this off. So don't ignore that fourth E, right? The top E of experience in my 4 E's of my pyramid to say that we need to do what feels right for us. If we're going to save, which we all should be doing, right? The big question is how much? Where? All these questions we have. And I use the acronym SAVE for this. And I say, you know what? S is start. Just start. Don't get so hung up on it being perfect. Start with $200 a month is going into my TFSA account or into this high interest savings account. Whatever it might be. If you want a convention, take 10 to 20% of your income and set that aside as saving. A is for automatic. We don't want to have to rethink this. Remember the wall, we're busy. We're putting this off. We don't need another thing to do. We lack time. So make this automatic once you set it up. That's the beauty of our digital world. We're consistent then, we're disciplined, which is the key when we're saving, to do this over and over again, right? That compounding effect. Atomic habits, like James Clear talks about. V stands for varied return. Do not let this money now just sit there not earning a return. Great that you've saved and you have $10,000 sitting in your high interest savings account at the bank. But when you look at it, your high interest is 0.01%. That is not going to get you to the finish line. That's not going to build wealth. Women are good investors. We need to do more of it. Because when we invest, as long as we don't need this money for a period of time, and we could talk for hours about investing, and there is market variability, so it needs to be that you're in it for the long run. But that's why women are so good at it, because when we invest, we stick to the plan. We don't look for the next shiny object and turn our attention there. Maybe we're playing around with a little bit of Bitcoin, but we're not putting life savings into it. Okay, so women are good investors, but we're not doing enough of it. And I recently read a stat that 70% of our assets are sitting in cash. E stands for end in mind when we're saving. Why are we saving? Once again, this goals and priorities. It's so important that we know our why, and then we're going to stick to it. We're going to keep putting that money aside. And I'll show you this graph on the side, and person A and person B are both saving $500 a month, and they're earning a 5% annual return. So clearly they're investing. One difference. Person A starts at age 30, the pink bar. Person B just waits a little longer and they start at age 40. You don't think that that's a big deal, but in those 10 years, that means that at the age of 65, person A has $270,000 more. Now, we're still happy to be person B. That person B has saved $300,000. It's still more than zero, and it's great. But you see the effect of time, automatic, being disciplined. And really, that is the way that we can grow our wealth. It's not just by a high income, it's what we do with it, right? And this is how we're taking power and control, because we're setting up this save. We're setting up the automatic savings amount. We're being very intentional where it's going, and we're focusing on growing our money. Goals and priorities, remember, that's the base of everything. So when we make our savings decision, when we decide the income that we want, the career we want, when we decide where we're going to spend our money, all of this should be based on our own goals and priorities. And we should be saying yes to the things that are important to us. And we're going to be providing a worksheet that I share with clients, and I actually review with them. I was on a call last night with a couple, and they were joking about this is marriage counseling, and I have them do this exercise separately, and it's super helpful because then they can communicate and talk about their goals and priorities. So we do that, and then they come together and they say, okay, where are we on the same page? Where can we make some changes? The one thing you want to make sure is that you identify those things. Ramit Sethi is a great blogger. I don't know what's happening with my screen here. That is not me. Someone is drawing all over my screen. But identifying your money dials is what he talks about. And Ramit Sethi he has a good blog, and he has some different resources out there. But Money Dials says those are the things that are ultimately so important to you, that is where you direct your money, and you don't put it to the things that aren't important to you. And so don't spend money on things such as, for me, I mean, my kids would be embarrassed that, Mom, your Samsung phone, what version? I don't know. That, to me, that's not important. I'm not getting the latest and greatest. For someone else, that is very important, the latest technology. So know what that is for you as an example. So this is the worksheet that I'm going to be sharing with you, and I call it the A to E Goals and Priorities worksheet. A, accommodation and assets. B, bucket list. C, career and contribution. D, dependence. Who are those people in your community? Not just your children. There's tons of people out there who depend on you. How do you want to show up for them? And E is expectations and experiences. So this is an exercise you can go through, and it asks you several questions. And these aren't dollar amounts that you have to fill in. This is about the life you want to create for yourself. And I try to cover these different areas to hopefully be all encompassing, because when we make decisions and we say, this is important to me, there's almost always a financial impact. So we need to be very clear in what we need to do then financially in order to get there. Some of the challenges in achieving financial satisfaction and security are these are a few of them, and what I see, and I want to introduce this idea of there's 3 resources available to us. And I'm sure I didn't create this, but this is something that, to me, I hear a lot of time and money, but I needed to add this energy component, because these are really our resources, right? We have time, we have energy, and we have money. Now, and I think of energy because of the last 18 months and what we've been going through. And I think a lot of that has been draining. I mean, it can have an impact on our money, also our energy and our time. But what good is having time that I've set aside to be with my daughters at night if I don't have the energy to show up? And what good is it if we spend all of our time creating to earn money, but we don't have time then to spend on other things? Then we will not necessarily have financial satisfaction from that. So I'd argue there's always this balance between these, and trying to achieve this satisfaction between time, energy, and money can sometimes be a give and take, and that can happen at different points in our life. And I have to admit, I mean, I gave up a ton of time and energy in order to make money as an investment banker. And that helped me build my wealth very early on in my career. But there was definitely a sacrifice to that. Other challenges in achieving financial satisfaction are when the goalposts keep moving, right? This lifestyle creep that I talk about is that, you know, the wine I drank in my 20s is not the same that I drink now in my 30s. No, I'm not in my 30s. That's a joke. But in my 40s, I'm not drinking the Ernst & Gallia White Zinfandel anymore. I mean, maybe I should try it again this summer. I don't know. But now, like, you're moving into the Amaronis, right? Our tastes change, our lifestyle changes. And I think we have to be very careful about that, because if we just keep moving the goalposts, we will never reach that. So let's make it very intentional. And that can reduce our happiness, right? If we just continue to increase our expectations and don't have the results that go with it. Social comparison. So I talked about the high heels. It's a huge risk to us. Because as soon as we compare ourselves to others, we can feel like we have a lot more, or we can feel like we have a lot less. And this is a big thing that I talk with my daughters about. And they might make a comment and they say, wow, Mom, look at that. They must be so rich. You know, we'll see a big house or a fancy car, whatever it is. And I say, they sure look rich, right? And maybe they are. And that really doesn't matter. But it's about making sure you're true to what you need to make yourself happy. And what's very interesting, when I have clients do their A to E goals worksheet, you know what, they come back to me and say, you know, we have a lot of the things that we said were important. So maybe we're there, and maybe with some tweaking, we can continue to live the life that we want and just kind of add a few things. But the social comparison is a risk. And who do you hang out with? Your relationships. Like I said, you can feel really poor, or you can feel like the wealthiest person in the room. And it depends. And this can be within our families. This is why money is an issue within families. It can be the friends, all those different things. And, you know, an interesting statistic is, God help you, if somebody wins the lottery on your street, you're twice as likely to declare bankruptcy. Nothing has changed in your life. Now, we're talking about a lottery where the neighbor wins enough to not move out of your neighborhood, that kind of winnings. It's enough to change their cars, maybe put a boat in the driveway. You see them, the van backing up with some new furniture. Maybe they invite you over and they're serving Amarone wine. You brought your Zinfandel, right? And suddenly your expectations, your goals have changed, but nothing has actually changed in your life other than a neighbor has changed their spending habits. So anyway, this is important that we always stay true to what really is going to give us our own financial satisfaction. So going back to our equation, wealth we build. How do we build wealth? Pay, right? Have a plan, ask for what you want, and invest in yourself. Build your income. Absolutely. It's going to help us. Understand your spending and be very intentional where it goes, because that hard-earned money that we make, every dollar we earn, right? We put a lot of time and energy to do that. Let's make sure that we're directing where that goes. Save or repay debt. These are the ways that we can build wealth. Power and control is the great multiplier. Giving you more money without power and control is not going to help you. Giving you more money when you have significant power and control, yes, great multiplier here. We want to increase our power and control by what? By being engaged, educating ourselves, taking action. It's not scary once we start doing it. It really isn't. And that's where I see that in itself builds financial confidence. Cleaning out our financial closet helps us feel power and control, because it's the uncertainty that causes us stress. Alignment with our goals and priorities talks so much about this, the personal and mindful, and it's what everything really needs to be based on. And that is what gives us personal financial security. And James Clear puts out a weekly email that's I find valuable. It's nice and short, and it's always to the point. And what you can see from all my quotes is I can turn any quote into a money quote, and they don't necessarily mean it that way, but I take it that way. But let's be forgiving with our past self. We're at this point. That doesn't mean that has to be everything you do going forward, but be strict today. Set in place what's important to you and save, repay debt, build income, watch your spending, whatever it is, so that you know then that future self that you can take care of. And know that those goals might change, right? Some of your what you need in life is going to change, and you need to be flexible with yourself as well. So before I end, I just want to make sure that we continue this dialogue, and I talk about money conversations. We need to continue to talk about money, and we need to talk about it in a way that's empowering. It's not about finding out what your neighbor makes. You know, I had this question in Money Club recently, and they said, you know, how much do we have to share? Well, I think it's a bit on a need to know basis. I don't think we all have to be putting in, you know, our salaries in the chat. We're not going to ask for that. But I think a big issue with the pay gap is that we don't know what's out there. So I think more research, more forthcoming information has to be available. But what I'm talking about here is really having the conversations with people who either impact our financial position or we have the ability to impact theirs. And it's important, no matter what our level of comfort or knowledge is we can engage in these conversations. And this is why I love to build women's financial confidence, because when a money topic comes up and you're out with another couple or whatever it might be, or in your family, I want you engaging in that conversation. I want you asking questions, because your perspective, what you've learned along the way, is important, and it's not wrong. It's different. And that is the way you're going to learn. And that's the way others are going to learn from you. So who do we have these conversations with? Our spouse or partner. We have to have this kind of communication. And we cannot delegate this role. We can't be the bill payer and the day-to-day, and they handle all the long-term stuff. Yeah, he has the insurance policies and the investments. He meets with the investment advisor. We don't all have to be making these, doing the actual actions of it, but we need to be making decisions together. Parents. We, as you know, if you're in my kind of age group, our parents are aging. We need to show up for them as well. Everything's gone digital now. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of fraud. There's risks to them. We need to understand what their plans are, what their future goals are, what their financial security is, so that we can help them through that, right? And I'm not talking about helping them financially. I'm talking about helping make sure they have things in place that they need, their estate plan, right? Pieces like that. Our kids, children, we can have a conversation with them, and everyone says, when can we start giving allowance? And I say, as soon as they won't eat it. Give it to them. Give them money. When they are 2 or 3, as soon as they won't put it into their mouth, we can start to train kids very early. And I don't think it is too early. And then we have the discussion of, well, everything is digital. And I agree. And this is why my kids have Coho prepaid Visa cards. Because you know what? We can't say, oh, they need to touch it, feel it. That is why adults are getting into trouble with credit cards and lines of credit. We need to understand how to use a digital wealth mechanism and spending, and our income's coming into our bank account, right? We don't touch that money anymore. So we need to teach our kids, and they're not too young, and they can understand the concept of debt. And I'll tell you this quick story that my daughter's probably 3 years ago or so. She's about 8 or 9, and they got $5 allowance every week. This is before we set it up to be automatic. We'd give them the cash. She came to me, she said, Mom, you've missed our allowance for 3 weeks. So normally that would be $15, but because you're late, you owe me $20. She knew we owed her because there was a debt relationship there, right? Did I pay her $20? You bet I did, because it's very important that they understand these concepts. Advisors. What do I mean by this? These are the people that help us along this financial journey. And I have to say, if you do not want to have a money conversation with your advisor, and I'm talking financial advisor, banker, accountant, whoever it is that you need to have money conversations with, who impact your financial position, and you don't want to have a money conversation with them, then that is a big red flag. And there's lots of different options out there. And so find somebody that you're comfortable having that conversation with. Now, maybe it's not their fault. Maybe you need to give them an extra chance and engage in that conversation, but make sure you do that. Don't just talk to these people once a year and give them a little bit of information and go your way. They are there, you're paying them money, and we need to have an ongoing dialogue there. It's very, very important. That's the way you build that power and control again. So I'm going to end and leave you with this. And it's the idea that our financial life is a journey. We don't just arrive. It's not a destination. This is an ongoing process. However, we get these systems put in place, and then we just build on it. And it's these small intentional steps. And that is what yields those results, right? It's the person A versus person B versus person C, let's say 0. They never started saving, right? And they always ended up at the 0 mark. So every step matters. And there's more than one path. I think I've made that very clear. We don't have to follow someone else's just because they love that advisor and you just have this gut feel. There's nothing wrong with you. That's fine. Your parent's advisor might not be the right one for you. Know as women that we deserve to have financial security. I think this is an issue, that we don't know about having this wealth and building wealth as a virtue. We see money as taboo. Maybe this is a negative value to have. And I argue against that because we show up differently when we have financial security. We then can have a ripple effect where we help others. And that's the last point. Do great things with the financial power you gain. And that's what we do. We go out and we help families and charities with our time, our energy, and our money. So don't give this up to someone else. I know that everyone is capable to move forward from where they're at. And I so appreciate this time. And I hope there are lots of questions that I can address. I thank you for your time. I would love for you to get in touch, reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, send me an email. I had to give my phone number there because I used the illustration of the phone. Let's do it old-fashioned way. Give me a call, right? Or visit my website. So with that, thank you. And I'd love to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. That was an amazing presentation, and you had so much information that I think a lot of people will find so insightful. I loved the part about your financial closet. It's very relatable. So I guess let's dive right into our Q&A now. So we had a few questions that we'll start with from those that registered, and from there we'll head on to those in the chat.
Great.
So what are some good places to start learning about investing?
Okay, good question. And I guess, you know, that it is what I do. So I'd have to admit that financial education is a big piece of my business, and I do offer different webinars. So I would suggest you look out for those. Some good resources are podcasts. Mooh La, Money Made Simple. I like that as a podcast. Preet Bandry, he has a money school YouTube channel. Womencents magazine, womencents.ca is a great place. Wealthsimple as a robo-advisor, they do a very good job of describing and explaining investing from a simple point of view. And actually, I'm doing a webinar with Wealthsimple next Tuesday. So that could be a great place to start. But I don't know that there's necessarily a book just on investing. I think it's those pieces. I like GetSmarterAboutMoney.ca is another option where they define different pieces. And I'd really look for independent sources so that then you trust the information and you don't feel like there's anyone selling you a product.
Those are some great resources that you just gave us. I hope you guys all wrote those down.
Sorry, that was a little quick. I think we're going to send a lot of, they probably are covered in some of the resources.
Yeah. I guess sort of leading on still about investing, what advice do you have for those who are behind in their investing due to different circumstances?
Well, I think you have to look at your personal money equation, right? And what can you do? So what the message right from the start is start where you're at. So it's not too late. It's always a good time to start, which is now. And you need to look then and say, well, if you feel a bit behind, where can you make more significant changes? And looking at your income and your spending and really setting up some automatic savings and just jumping in. And what I find interesting is once we do start investing and saving intentionally is that we find more money because now we know where it's going. And that really does help because now we're just very intentional and focused on it. And I have clients putting more money and they go from the $200, increasing it to $300 a month, not the other way, unless there's been a shock in their life.
Thank you. So how much money do you recommend in order to live a modest life, such as no mortgage, only one trip a year, that sort of thing?
Oh, that is okay. You know, if I've learned anything, what is a modest life? Because everybody comes to me and says, we're not big spenders. No, we're not big spenders. Okay, what is modest? Because there's a big range. All right. So when you say no mortgage, are you paying rent? Trip. Are you going to the Cayman Islands, or are you backpacking and staying in hostels? Like there's quite a range there as well. But if I had to give a number, I've seen people live off of, you can live off probably $30,000-$40,000 a year, one person. I see single people doing that.
Wow, that's quite an impressive amount to live off of.
Yeah, go do your cash flow and see what a modest, I'm sure everyone thinks, I don't spend a lot. And then you look at your cash flow and say, wow, that adds up.
As a couple, how do you work on your finances when living in the same household and you have to split costs?
This is a question I'm getting more and more, and I actually love it because it shows the control that women are taking in the household, right? They're making an income, and it's not just simply men earning the money and, you're just spending it or whatever. So it's really making those financial decisions together. There's not one right way to do it. And I'd have to say it's going to evolve over your life of being married. And, I don't even mention my husband. I don't know if I did in this presentation. I talk about my girls, it's terrible, but, I've been married for 21 years, most days happily. He's still in the picture. So it has evolved though. When I moved to Toronto, we were engaged. He was in Calgary. Then I come back, I am, an investment banker and I'm making money. And I was like, we're keeping this stuff separate. And then I stayed home with my daughters and I'm like, we are going to combine and we're going to get me on this account, right? So it changes throughout your life. The key is to figure out what works for you and to share. And I've actually built now a cash flow sheet where instead of it just being line items and for each of them, I actually have columns where then I say partner A and partner B and who pays for what, and being clear on that and knowing that you might have to adjust. But I think key is you have to talk about it. You can't have hidden spending and hidden assets. It's just not going to work in the long term. It's knowing what your goals and priorities are and sharing that with each other and then working towards those common goals. And it doesn't have to be those splitting every expense 50-50, because maybe you've agreed that one of you is going to be spending more time with children, for example, more time in the household or whatever it might be. But I think you need to set up the expectations from the start and know that 50-50 might change if somebody's income goes down. Maybe it's now you're going to be 60-40 instead with an allocation of the expenses.
Okay. So another one is dealing with financial advisors. What credentials should you look for in an advisor? Which ones do you have? And is it worth it to get a financial advisor and pay a fee? Okay,
well, there's this is the problem with the industry is what is a financial advisor? And that can mean many different things because it's not regulated. So I don't call myself a financial advisor because I view that as someone who is selling investments, who is licensed to do that. And I'm not, because I'm not selling securities. So they would have to be regulated. I mean, if they're working at a dealer, they have to have the right securities licensing and that kind of thing. I think the most important thing when working with anyone with your money is having a trusting relationship and how you feel about them and being very clear up front. What are you going to do for me? What does this look like? What does this relationship look like? Are you going to reach out once a year and we're going to talk about X, or do I call with any questions? How detailed are we going to get? What is going to be the output, right? We wouldn't buy any other service or product without understanding that. And that's one thing. So I'm a financial coach and educator. that is my expertise. I bring various different areas of education through, I do have some securities licensing. Financial planning is something that I continue to do courses on as well. But I'm not selling securities, so then that's different, what I require. You have to assume that an institution has what you need. It's more important, honestly, is what the trust and what they're giving for what you're paying, and asking. And it's very interesting where a lot of people don't know what they're paying their financial advisor, the person managing their investments, but no one's ever hired me and didn't say, hey, what do you charge for your coaching program? Right? It's very transparent. And that's where the industry's going. This is what you pay for, this, you know what to expect.
Okay, I guess in sort of dealing with financial advisors again, is it safer to use the financial advisor through a bank?
Safer. Well, safer, not necessarily. And once again, I mean, there's many independent dealers that are very good, but understanding their investment philosophy is more important, and making sure that you understand the level of risk that you're taking on. I think what's happened is that there's been a move to, some of the robo-advisor or online investing platform. If we're just talking about investing for now, like a Wealthsimple as an example. And I saw somebody ask about the webinar. Just go on my website, womencents.ca, and it's the first banner, and you can register, and it's for free for next week. And it will not be a sales pitch. This is by Wealthsimple. We're going to be talking about investing. But there's really been this move to have a more transparent platform and understand their investing and why it's going up or going down, instead of kind of some mutual funds at the bank that we don't fully understand. When you talk about safer, it can also mean, are your assets secure? Well, there is insurance to cover that. And Canadian Investor Protection Fund, as long as any dealer is a member of that, then your account is protected up to $1 million. So it's something to be aware of when you are using an investment platform or an investment dealer, to make sure that they have the CIPF or Mutual Fund Dealers Association, where your account's going to be protected if there was a bankruptcy of the institution.
Wow, there's lots to learn about banks and everything. So next we have a bit of a vulnerable question. So I'll just start off. I'm in my early 40s and we've just started the process of separating. I run my own business and it's in the early years, so the income isn't super stable yet, and my now ex had been contributing the bulk towards family and household expenses. We don't have much in the way of savings aside from our RRSPs, and we have a substantial mortgage. I've crunched my numbers for what I need to earn in my business over the next 2 years to take over the mortgage, if I choose to, and support myself and my kids. But I'm wondering what else I should be thinking about, as well as how I can rebuild financially after losing a substantial amount of my assets once this process is finalized.
Divorce is very difficult. And unfortunately, I do have a lot of experience in working with women who have either gone through it or who are going through it. And it erodes wealth. Absolutely, it does. And it takes a financial hit, and it can be years. And so I'm not saying that there's an easy answer to that. It sounds like this person knows what they need to do, and has to be a focus on rebuilding income and going back to that money equation once again. And I think that the lifestyle, unfortunately, has to significantly change when we go through something like that. And spending has to be adjusted in goals and priorities as well. And it's not easy, and it's difficult. And then the more that we can continue to build income, knowing time and energy are also, limited resources, and having diversified and multiple income streams as much, or having that, if you can create passive income within your business where it's not just you, so you can augment it and compound it. And I don't know the kind of business, but if that's an opportunity, then that could be as well.
Thank you so much for answering that, as well as for the individual who felt comfortable enough to ask that question within our group of ladies.
I'm sure that's something that many have gone through or going through, and it's very difficult. And financial is just one piece to that. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's all the time we have for questions as we're getting close to the end of our event. I'll pass it off to Susan now.
Thank you, Brittany, for your leading tonight's event. Really appreciate it. And thank you to Vanessa for joining us this evening. I've been a big fan for a long time, and I'm so glad to welcome you to our stage and to hear about the financial closet. I was watching the chatter and people really connected to those high heels. Like, I've never been a big high heels person. It's like, it's kind of cool to hear that, okay, well, maybe that means I have a low tolerance for, I don't know, risk, pain. I don't know what it is, but it was really clever analogy. I've been a fan of that for a while. So I really appreciate your incredible wealth of knowledge. See what I did there? and really your generosity of time for joining us this evening. Your insights on how to create your own money strategy and your personal money equation, like, you had so many wonderful acronyms and things that made it really easy to remember, like the financial closet, the save analogy. And then I really saw you summarize your presentation into like really 4 key points, like ask for what you want, invest in yourself, save and repay debt, and be mindful about where your money goes. So really, really wonderful advice. And I definitely got to pull out that will, get that redone. Oh my gosh. So thank you for that good reminder. And you're basically your no nonsense approach. Like, I felt like you were just really speaking our language tonight. So thank you for that. As a follow-up, there's been lots of chatter around getting resources and so on. As always, there's a wealth of information here. We'll be sending out a note after this event it won't be tonight, it'll be in the coming days, with a link to resources and an opportunity to provide feedback and suggestions for future topics. I also really want to thank our volunteers this evening. We have a really amazing team here with Lean in Calgary. I'm so proud of our team. We have about 15 volunteers, and there's quite a few people who work to put these events off every few weeks. We've been targeting every 6 weeks since about the fall. So our programs team is headed by Rhonda McDonald. We have Julia Rooney, Brittany Gilmore, Babette Machelka, on our programs team. And then our marketing team also is at many of our weekly event meetings with Cara Tobin, Jessica Lawson, and Andrea Lee, all being like weekly volunteers, like even putting off a virtual event series like this to be able to offer this as a complimentary service to our community is something that takes an incredible amount of dedication. The good news is we have a lot of fun together, and I know we're all lifelong friends at this point. Like, it's just been a real blessing in my life to be able to interact and lead this group of amazing women every week. It's such an amazing journey. And now for something completely different. We have our next event coming up is going to be focused on networking. I know we're all desperately missing our networking events. And while we still cannot hold an in-person event, we're planning to host something virtually using a different interactive platform. It won't be on Zoom, but it will still be virtual. Of course, you'll have to bring your own cocktails or beverage of choice, wear your own heels if you like to. Sitting down makes it easier. And for those of you not in Calgary, we are going to have a Stampede theme, which means you get to join us. So for those of you joining us from elsewhere in Calgary tonight, Calgary is a beautiful city, about 1.2 million people, nestled in the foothills of the Canadian Rocky Mountains. And we are also known to host what we boastfully call the greatest outdoor show on earth, which is essentially a 10-day rodeo and large-scale country fair. So not sure what that's going to look like this year, but there's a lot of spin-off events that happen around the Stampede. And so we will be having a virtual one. You need to come with your cowboy hats, any Western gear you have. And we will have like a mixer online. So it'll be a really fun way to be able to connect with each other virtually. We're looking at it being, I think we landed on June 24th, am I right? Which is a Thursday, so 6 weeks from now. And just make sure you're signed up for a newsletter. And if you haven't already, just hop in there and sign up. Maybe someone, I'll pop it in the chat, or we can put it, maybe someone could just pop it in the chat here quickly in terms of www.leanincanada.com/Calgary, and you can get onto our newsletter.